They say fatherhood changes a man, but they never tell you how being a fake father will mess with your head. Trust me, the nursery isn't the only thing that gets demolished. As for me, I learned that sometimes the biggest surprise isn't the pregnancy. It's the betrayal wrapped in it. I'm Lucas, 34 years old, a tech consultant, and, until a few months ago, happily married to Emily. We met the usual way: mutual friends, awkward flirting, and too many tequila shots. Fast forward 8 years, and we were living the dream. No kids yet by choice, a decent house in Denver, and 2 cats that probably loved her more than they loved me. Life was predictable, stable, and exactly how I liked it. Emily was ambitious, always chasing the next promotion or training session at her HR job. I supported her drive. After all, it made her happy. But over time, her professional growth seemed to come with more late nights, unexplained meetings, and weekend conferences. I ignored it. I told myself it was all part of her career. Big mistake. One Friday morning, Emily walked into the kitchen with a glow I hadn't seen in years. Her smile was wide, her cheeks flushed, and for a second, I thought maybe she was just happy to see me. Then she dropped the bomb. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a siren. I felt like the universe had played a cruel joke on me. We had agreed, no kids until we were both ready, and I was damn sure we'd been careful. Every single time, my mind raced, trying to rationalize the impossible. I stammered something about being happy but confused, and Emily brushed it off with a breezy, "Sometimes it just happens." She hugged me tightly, and I let her. But in the back of my mind, the first seeds of doubt began to sprout. For the next few weeks, I tried to play the role of the excited dad-to-be. I went to appointments, listened to her talk about baby names, and even repainted the guest room a soft sage green for the nursery. But deep down, something felt off. Emily's phone became practically glued to her hand. She started leaving the house for hours without a clear explanation, her go-to excuse being errands or needing some air. Then came the night I found the receipt. It was buried in a stack of old mail, carelessly tossed onto the counter. A dinner for 2 at a high-end restaurant, dated 2 weeks before the pregnancy announcement, with a handwritten note on the back: "Thanks for the unforgettable night." My chest tightened. I stared at that receipt until the edges blurred. Emily's behavior, the sudden pregnancy, the unexplained absences, all of it clicked into place. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was using this pregnancy to trap him. But instead of confronting her right away, I decided to wait. I needed proof, real, undeniable proof. And when the time came, I'd make sure the truth was exposed in a way no one would forget. The next few weeks were a strange mix of suffocating silence and Emily's endless chatter about baby plans. She seemed happier than ever, glowing with excitement as she scrolled through nursery designs, baby clothes, and parenting books. And I became the dutiful husband, her silent shadow, observing every move with a forced smile and clenched teeth. By now, I was keeping track. Every receipt, every unexplained absence, every subtle lie. I started taking mental snapshots of her behavior, locking them away for when the time came. My phone became a vault of evidence. Screenshots of her location history, blurry photos of her errands that always seemed to end at the same coffee shop, and notes about her new obsession with yoga classes she had never once invited me to join. Then came the nursery. Emily insisted we transform the guest room into a Pinterest-worthy baby haven. Her vision? A woodland theme with muted greens, soft yellows, and adorable cartoon foxes that made me sick to my stomach. She dragged me to boutique stores where we spent obscene amounts of money on furniture that looked like it had been crafted by elves. A crib so fancy it might as well have come with a mortgage. Curtains spun from fairy wings. Lamps shaped like tree stumps. Each swipe of my credit card felt like a slap. Every purchase, a nail in the coffin of my patience. It was during one of these shopping trips that she slipped up. We were at a trendy baby store. One of those places where everything costs triple just because the cashier greets you with a glass of cucumber-infused water. Emily was chatting with the clerk about due dates when she mentioned, offhandedly, that she'd just reached 11 weeks. That wasn't right. I remember the timeline she'd given me when she first announced the pregnancy. It didn't add up. At 11 weeks, the date of conception would fall before the night of the dinner receipt I'd found. Either she was lying about the timeline, or no, I needed more. I wasn't about to jump to conclusions without concrete evidence. But that moment stuck with me, a tiny splinter of truth pressing deeper under my skin with each passing day. Back home, I threw myself into the nursery project, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to stay close, to watch her, to wait for her to slip up again. As I hung wallpaper covered in smiling deer and rabbits, I imagined the look on her face when she realized the web of lies she'd spun was unraveling. I pictured her fumbling for excuses, her bright future turning to ash. Late one night, as I painted the last coat on the walls, I heard Emily talking softly in the kitchen. I crept down the hall, stopping just short of the doorway, my breath barely steady as I strained to hear her words. "Don't worry," she whispered. "He doesn't suspect a thing." The air in my lungs turned to ice. I peeked around the corner, expecting to see her holding her phone, but instead, she was sitting at the table with her planner open, writing furiously. She wasn't talking to someone. She was rehearsing. She was rehearsing for something. The next day, she left for another one of her mysterious errands, and I did what I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. I searched the planner. What I found wasn't just suspicious, it was damning. Dates, notes, and even sketches of places where she'd met someone. A trip planned for him to finally meet. And in the margin of one page, her handwriting. "It's time to tell Lucas the truth. He'll understand." I sat there, staring at those words, a storm of anger and disbelief brewing inside me. Understand? Understand what? That she thought I'd be her safety net while she built a life with someone else? That I'd be her backup plan if her fairy tale romance didn't work out? No, not this time. I closed the planner, set it back exactly where I'd found it, and walked into the nursery. The cheerful woodland animals stared back at me, mocking me with their painted smiles. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the evidence I'd collected. It was time to stop playing the victim. By the time Emily's due date crept closer, the house looked like a spread from a parenting magazine. The nursery was flawless, an Instagram-perfect haven for a baby that wasn't mine. Every detail was handcrafted, from the fox-shaped mobile to the monogram blanket with initials I knew didn't belong to me. My anger had settled into something colder, sharper. I wasn't just simmering anymore. I was planning. The planner, the receipts, the whispers. I'd pieced together everything I needed. Emily thought she was in control, that I was some clueless, devoted husband, too blind or too trusting to see the truth. She didn't realize that every trip to the yoga class, every secret phone call, and every he doesn't suspect a thing rehearsal had only fueled what was coming. The irony was delicious. She wanted me to believe this baby was mine, to play the role of the doting father while her little fantasy unraveled in the background. But I wasn't going to play my part, not the way she expected. The day Emily's water broke, I was calm, eerily so. I helped her into the car, held her hand during the drive, and even reminded her to breathe between contractions. "You're doing great," I told her. My voice was steady, soothing, the perfect mask for the storm brewing inside me. At the hospital, chaos swirled around us. Nurses bustled in and out, monitors beeped, and doctors gave encouraging updates. Emily gripped my hand so tightly it felt like my bones might snap. But I barely felt it. My focus wasn't on the contractions or the sterile smell of the room. It was on my plan. When the nurse handed me the clipboard to fill out the birth details, I hesitated. The section for the father's information stared back at me like a loaded gun. My hand hovered over the paper, pen trembling between my fingers. This was my chance to set the wheels in motion. I smiled at the nurse and asked, "Is there a way to update this later? Just in case we want to finalize everything after the baby's here?" She nodded, assuming it was just nervous father jitters. I thanked her and set the clipboard aside. Emily's labor dragged on for hours. She screamed, cursed, and clutched at me as though I were her anchor in a storm. In those moments, she probably thought I was her rock, her unwavering support. But every scream, every cry, only reminded me of the lies she had fed me. Finally, the moment arrived. The doctor announced the baby was crowning, and a wave of anticipation swept through the room. Emily was crying, tears of pain, joy, or guilt, I wasn't sure. Maybe all three. The nurses congratulated me, as though I'd just scaled Everest. But my Everest was still ahead. The baby's cries filled the room, and the nurse placed the tiny, wriggling bundle in Emily's arms. Her face lit up, glowing with maternal pride. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Look at her. Isn't she beautiful?" She was. But all I could see were the shadows of betrayal woven into her tiny features. I nodded, forcing a smile, and kissed Emily's forehead. "She's perfect," I said, my voice steady, my rage buried deep beneath the surface. But then came the part Emily didn't expect, the hospital's routine paternity test. A small detail she had overlooked in her web of lies. The nurse explained it was standard procedure, a quick heel prick to check for any hereditary health issues. Emily's face went pale for just a second, barely long enough for anyone else to notice, but I saw it. I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. "Oh," she said, forcing a laugh. "Is that really necessary? I mean, we're healthy. There's no family history of anything." Her voice was light, but her grip on the baby tightened. "It's better to be safe," I replied smoothly. Just in case. We want what's best for her, don't we?" The nurse smiled and reassured Emily it was routine. "It's just policy," she said, not catching the unspoken tension crackling in the room. Emily nodded stiffly, unable to argue without raising suspicion. I sat back in the chair, watching as they pricked the baby's tiny foot and collected the sample. My heart raced, not with nerves, but with satisfaction. Emily didn't realize it yet, but this was the beginning of the end. The results wouldn't come back for a few days, and I intended to make those days count. I spent every moment by Emily's side, playing the perfect husband and father, all while preparing for what was to come. When those results landed, the truth wouldn't just come out, it would explode, and I would be the one holding the match. The first few days after the baby's arrival were surreal. Emily was basking in her maternal glow, posting carefully curated photos on social media with captions like, "Our little miracle," and "Lucas is already the best dad." She tagged me in every post, probably thinking it would reinforce the illusion. Each like, heart, and congratulations from friends and family felt like another dagger. But I played along, replying with smiling emojis and saccharine comments. Inside, I was counting down the hours. When the hospital called with the paternity test results, I was alone in the kitchen, drinking my third cup of coffee. The woman on the other end of the line was cheerful, oblivious to the emotional hand grenade she was delivering. "Hi, Mr. Carter. Just calling to let you know the test results came back. There's no concern about any hereditary conditions, which is great news." But she paused, and I could almost hear the hesitation in her voice. "There's something else we need to discuss." I already knew what she was going to say, but hearing it aloud was the confirmation I needed. "Unfortunately, the test results indicate you're not the biological father. We recommend following up with your primary care provider to explore this further. Let us know if you'd like a formal copy of the results." I thanked her, my voice calm, almost cheerful. The rage I'd felt for months transformed into something colder, more calculated. This wasn't the moment for anger. It was the moment for action. That evening, I suggested we host a small gathering to celebrate the baby. Emily loved the idea, jumping at the chance to show off her perfect family. She texted her friends and family, while I made a few calls of my own to her lover. I'd done my research and found his contact info weeks ago. Let's call him Adam, because every snake in a garden needs a biblical name. The call was short, direct. "Hey, Adam, this is Lucas. I think we need to talk. Why don't you swing by for the baby's celebration tonight? I'm sure Emily would love to see you." There was a pause before Adam answered, his voice hesitant. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Oh, I insist," I said, my tone dripping with fake warmth. "After all, this party is as much for you as it is for me." The party started at 6 p.m. Guests trickled in, marveling at the beautiful nursery and the sweet little bundle of joy in Emily's arms. She was radiant, greeting everyone with a smile that made me sick. But I played my role, charming the guests, passing out drinks, and accepting compliments on my new dad glow. At 6:45, Adam arrived. He walked in, looking awkward and out of place. Emily froze when she saw him, her smile faltering for just a moment before she recovered. "Adam, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice overly bright. "Oh, I invited him," I said casually, stepping into the room. "After all, it's important for everyone who's been part of this journey to be here. Don't you think, Emily?" The room grew quiet, the guests exchanging confused glances. Emily's face turned pale, her eyes darting between Adam and me. She stammered something incoherent, but I didn't let her finish. "Since we're all here," I said, raising my glass, "I think it's time for a toast. To family, trust, and most importantly, the truth." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope containing the paternity test results. "You see, I've been dying to share a little announcement of my own." Emily's eyes widened in panic. "Lucas, don't." But it was too late. I opened the envelope and held up the paper for everyone to see. "This little miracle we're celebrating? Turns out, she's not mine." The silence was deafening. Emily's mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Adam looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. "And Emily," she broke. "Lucas, I can explain," she began, tears streaming down her face. "Explain what?" I interrupted, my voice cold. "That you lied to me? That you tried to trap me into raising another man's child? That you thought you could play me for a fool?" I turned to Adam, who was frozen in place. "Congratulations, buddy. She's yours. You should probably start thinking about how you're going to pay for that fancy nursery upstairs." Emily broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. The guests, too stunned to speak, slowly began to filter out, leaving her humiliation exposed like an open wound. By the end of the night, the house was silent, save for Emily's muffled cries from the nursery. I packed my bags, leaving the papers for the divorce lawyer on the kitchen counter. My last words to her before I walked out the door were simple, cutting, and final. "You wanted a family, Emily. Well, now you have one. Just not with me." Walking out that door felt like shedding a heavy, suffocating skin. The air outside was crisp, sharp, almost painful to breathe, but it was clean. My car was packed, the engine humming softly as I sat there, staring at the house I called home for nearly a decade. Inside, Emily was likely still crying, holding a baby that wasn't mine, surrounded by the wreckage of the life she'd so carefully fabricated. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel pity. All I felt was relief. I had planned this moment down to the last detail. Every bank account was locked. The joint credit cards were canceled, the utilities transferred to her name, and my belongings meticulously removed while she was busy tending to her double life. What I left behind was the skeleton of a marriage she had killed with every lie, every betrayal. The baby's nursery, once a symbol of hope, now stood as a monument to her deceit. But the piece de resistance? The divorce papers. They weren't just standard legal documents. They came with an addendum, a detailed timeline of her affair, Adam's involvement, and even the paternity test results. I'd included photos, screenshots, and records. It wasn't just a request for divorce. It was an indictment. I drove to a hotel, a modest place on the edge of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, and that's all I needed. That night, I stared at the ceiling, the weight of months of planning and secrecy finally lifting. I thought I might feel empty or lost, but instead I felt clarity, a strange, almost serene acceptance of what had happened. The next morning, I sent an email to everyone who had been at the party. Friends, family, coworkers, anyone who mattered. I kept it short, factual, and to the point. "Dear all, thank you for attending the celebration last night. I wanted to provide clarity on what transpired. As many of you witnessed, the paternity test confirmed I am not the biological father of Emily's child. This revelation has led me to file for divorce. I appreciate your understanding during this difficult time. Best regards, Lucas." I hit send and leaned back, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The fallout would be inevitable, but I wasn't going to hide from it. Let the whispers spread. Let the judgment fall where it belonged, on her shoulders, not mine. Over the next few days, I moved into a short-term rental and began piecing my life back together. Work became my escape, a routine I could control. Friends reached out, some offering sympathy, others asking for the salacious details. I told them the truth but spared the drama. The facts were damning enough on their own. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't handling things so gracefully. Her social media accounts, once filled with carefully curated happiness, were now barren. She had gone silent, likely overwhelmed by the barrage of questions and whispers from those who had once envied her perfect life. Adam? I didn't hear much about him, but I imagined he wasn't thrilled about being thrust into the role of dad overnight. One day, about a week after the party, I got a call from her mother. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I was ready for whatever guilt trip or emotional plea she was about to unleash. "Lucas," she began, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry. For everything. Emily, she's devastated. She knows she ruined everything, and she's trying to fix it." "Fix it?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "She can't fix this. She made her choices. She lied, cheated, and dragged me into her mess. Now she has to live with the consequences." Her mother was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I understand. I wanted you to know that not everyone supports what she did. We don't condone it." That gave me a sliver of satisfaction. "Thanks for saying that. But this isn't something I can forgive." And with that, I ended the call. The divorce was finalized faster than I expected, thanks to the airtight evidence I'd gathered. Emily didn't fight for much. How could she? She knew she had no leverage. The house, the savings, even the car, everything stayed with me. She was left with her lies, her guilt, and her shiny, new reality with Adam. The nursery, once a painful reminder, became something else entirely. I stripped it down, removed every trace of the woodland animals, and repainted it in neutral gray. It became an office, a space for me to rebuild, not just my life, but my sense of self. It's funny, they say betrayal breaks you, but in my case, it did the opposite. It made me sharper, stronger. And while Emily and Adam were busy fumbling their way through their mess, I was moving forward, clean, untangled, and ready for whatever came next. Emily's fall from grace was as dramatic as her betrayal. She had spent years building the perfect facade, wife, career woman, future mother. But it all crumbled the night I handed her the truth on a silver platter. It was almost poetic how swiftly the whispers spread, how quickly her carefully curated image was reduced to rubble. At first, Emily tried to salvage the situation. She leaned heavily on the few friends who hadn't walked away after the party, spinning tales about misunderstandings and marital strain. She played the victim, painting me as cold, unyielding, and unforgiving. But the paternity test results and the mountain of evidence I'd shared with key people left little room for doubt. Her social media, once a highlight reel of brunches, vacations, and work achievements, went dark. No more glowing captions, no more perfectly posed photos. I heard through mutual friends that she deleted her accounts entirely after a few scathing comments appeared under one of her posts. "What about your other family, Emily? Does Adam know about your social media lies?" Her professional life wasn't spared either. Emily's job at the HR firm, where she climbed the ranks with tireless ambition, took a hit. The company didn't fire her outright. Adultery isn't ground for dismissal, but the scandal made her toxic. Office gossip turned meetings into tense affairs, and clients began questioning whether they wanted to work with someone whose personal life was a public mess. Within months, she was demoted to a less visible role. As for Adam, he didn't exactly ride in on a white horse to save her. From what I gathered, the reality of fatherhood hit him like a freight train. Their initial glow of excitement faded quickly under the weight of sleepless nights, financial strain, and constant judgment from everyone who knew the story. They moved into a small apartment downtown, far from the suburban comfort Emily had been used to. She tried to make it work, posting rare, carefully worded updates about their new chapter. But the cracks were already showing. The last I heard, Adam left her about a year after the baby was born. He apparently couldn't handle the stress or the whispers. Some say he moved to another state, leaving Emily to juggle single motherhood and the ruins of her life. She went from being the woman who seemed to have it all to someone struggling to stay afloat. One evening, months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Emily at a grocery store. She was pushing a cart with her daughter, sitting in the seat, a bag of diapers precariously balanced on the edge. She looked tired, older, worn down in a way that no makeup or forced smile could hide. For a moment, I thought she might pretend not to see me, but our eyes met, and there was no escaping it. "Hi, Lucas," she said quietly, her voice carrying none of its old confidence. "Emily." I nodded, my tone polite but distant. She fumbled for words, glancing at her daughter, then back at me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I studied her for a moment, noting the weight of regret etched into her face. "I know," I said simply, "but sorry doesn't change what happened." She nodded, her eyes glassy, and I turned to leave. As I walked away, I heard her daughter giggle, a sound so innocent and pure that it made me pause for a second. But I didn't look back. Today, my life is peaceful. The nursery-turned-office is where I've built my consulting business into something successful. I've traveled, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating again. Emily's choices nearly broke me, but in the end, they gave me something far more valuable: clarity. She's now a ghost of the life I left behind, a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal. And me? I'm moving forward, knowing that the best revenge isn't just living well, it's thriving.